Greetings, YouTube. Let's leap to some conclusions. Specifically, let's talk about jumping. Um, because something I had never really thought about, and I don't think has ever come up for me or anyone I've ever played with, is that your jump distance is part of your overall movement for that turn. Whatever system you're using, that's probably going to be true. But specifically, Pathfinder, D&D, things like that, your jump distance is part of your overall movement. Now, that makes sense to me, but I don't know anyone that's ever actually implemented that limitation. And why do I say it's a limitation? Well, if I can run a specific distance in one 6-second round, okay? No, not me, I can't run at all. But the point is that my movement speed is probably about a 15, so I can move 15 feet in that 6 round as my movement, okay? Awesome. Um, and if I jump, I would be jumping for one of two reasons. To get over something, also not good. I'm not good at jumping. I am a very, very white guy. Uh, or to get a little bit extra distance. But realistically, even though my jump distance is going to be sad, it should stop at 15. I realize I'm being facetious, but it should stop at 15 because that's my movement. And if you don't do that, there will be players who will take their full 30 movement and then they'll jump at the end of it and expect to get their jump distance, which means they're going to be moving more distance than they could, by the book, get away with. But in my head, I'm like, well, if you can't do that, why would you do it at all? If I what's the purpose of the jump? Unless there really is something I have to get over. As a combat tactic, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, because if you run and jump, you can get farther, right? But if you run and you need a distance to run in, and your jump distance is now going to exceed your total movement allotment, say you've got a movement speed of 40 in that particular moment, you need 10 feet for a run-up, so 10 plus 40 would be 50, but your movement rate is 40. Okay? So you got a huge jump, 40 feet, but your movement rate's only 40 feet. You run 10, you make 40. What do? Do you stop dead in the middle of the air? Are you going because you're 10 feet short mechanically of the distance that you would logically make? So it's just kind of like which is quite funny and would make it into like a Murphy's Rules. You guys remember Murphy's Rules, where they would make fun of gaming mechanics? I loved those. They were so much fun. I think I might still have some of them in print somewhere around here. I'm not sure, but I just never thought about it. And again, I can never think of any point in games where that was a big deal, where any of us thought for a second that, logically you shouldn't be able to do this. And it just, in a situation where jumping was important, we didn't think about the overall movement distance. And in any time we didn't think about jumping, it didn't matter. And most of the time we didn't jump a lot. I've never seen jumping as being a major component of most characters unless you're building a character around a jumping build. And there are times people want to do that. You want to do a whole wushu thing, spring attack, you jump in, you hit your enemy, and you jump back out again, which is really cool, and can confuse the heck out of your opponent. But unless you're building a jumping character, how often does it matter to the rest of us? I mean, let's face it, I'm movement-wise a dwarf. We don't jump much. All right? I'm just not fast, and I can't jump. I never could. It's never my thing. I'm never going to be able to. I'm, a fat old man at this point. But I can never think of a time when any of us ever give it a second glance. But I mean, it does mechanically make sense. You can only have a certain amount of movement, whether you're running or you're jumping. You still only have a certain amount of movement, even though in my head, I think you should get something extra out of it. But if you do get something extra out of it, you know as well as I do, there are going to be people that are going to cheese the living hell out of that. And they'll be bouncing off the walls like super balls. So what have you done with it? Have you thought about this? Did you encounter someone who tried to abuse the system? Tried to, convince their GM that, yeah, yes, I realize that would exceed my movement, but, under these circumstances, because again, they were trying to cheese their GM out of something. Um, so tell me, I'm confused about it because it never occurred to me till quite recently, and I don't think anyone ever abused it, or anyone took advantage of it, or anyone even questioned it. But I mean, it makes mechanically some sense, even if it doesn't make much in my head.